Good morning everyone, my name is Jane Goodfellow and I work at West Coast Institute. I've actually been a lecturer there in education, retail and childcare for 18 years. So been a lecturer for a fair amount of time, and before that I was a teacher. So that's my background, is in primary teaching, early childhood teaching and special needs teaching. So a fair bit of experience in presenting information. But in that amount of time, often I'd be given a new unit and the first thing I do is go for the PowerPoint screen, open up the blank PowerPoint, type in the title and start working out what my topics were, my dot points. But after a little bit of time, I realised the students were actually nodding off. And as we became more online, the PowerPoints and the content was available to students. So I was thinking, okay, they're actually coming to class already having read that content. They already know it. So the big question for me was why? Why would they come to my class? And that's where I came up with PowerPointless. So welcome to my presentation on going PowerPointless for a whole year. So what did I do? And I have to be honest, I'm still going. I actually probably still have another year to go because I've still got lots of ideas that I still want to do and I haven't had a chance to do. So with my PowerPointless, it was a personal challenge that I set myself, but also having been a lecturer for so long, it's about putting myself out of my comfort zone and challenging myself a little bit to say, all right, what else can I do? How can I make my classes exciting, engaging, enticing, a bit like I do in the classroom when I present information for children? How can I make them really want to be there? So I came up with about 4 or 5 strategies that really worked with me. I'm a little bit of a techno head, not too much, but enough that new technology gets me a little bit excited. So the first thing I tried was blogging. Now I'd already written a blog, so I had a general idea what I was doing. I think I'm up to 5 blogs now. Some are personal and some are professional. But I found that a fantastic tool. I've really enjoyed it. And for this presentation today, I've actually set up a blog. So if you'd like to just take a note of that particular URL, you can go into the blog afterwards and it's just got a little bit of information on what I talked about today, but it also gives you the opportunity to make some comments, ask some questions, and I've also put links to all the things that I've talked about today. So you don't need to make too many notes. You can go straight into the blog in your own leisure. And I think that's just the first perfect example of why a blog can work really well. So with my blogging, I have put a link on what is a blog on my blog for you to blog. But it was more about it being a tool that I could use for students to record their learning. I could use it to communicate with them as well. I could set it up so that the students had access to, or they would use the blog themselves, so they would put posts up. I've also recently implemented it as an assignment. So one of my assignments in my diploma, for my diploma level students, is they have to set up a blog. And the best thing is it goes worldwide. So it's been very good for literacy because I've warned the students, possibly 3,000 people might read this in the next couple of minutes. You need to have your literacy spot on. So in terms of teaching them those extra LLN skills, editing, those sort of things, grammar, that's come in really handy. The start of my PowerPointless year was a conference that I had to give to primary teachers, and of course everyone's preparing their PowerPoints, and I thought, right, this is it. I'm going to try the blog out as a conference presentation first and then move it into the classroom. And it was really successful. I just scrolled down. It was great. I know what you're thinking. That's cheating, Jane. It's still a presentation, but it wasn't PowerPoint. It was a blog. So technically, I passed that. So give blogging a go. I recommend trying it personally first. I had one principal said, well, I'm just going to blog my exercise routine for a little while just to get a feel for it. Like I said, I did a personal one first, and that's now in its 4th year. What's really exciting about blogging is that your students will have a worldwide audience, but it's more than that. You can actually put on the blog how many hits they get a day, and then they start to see, oh, 200 people have been on my blog, and it makes it real. The learning becomes more authentic. In my area in education, we use blogs in schools, so it's even more authentic because they will set one up for the classroom when they move into the workplace. So that's been a lot of fun, as you can imagine. You can put images up, web links, all sorts of things. The next one I tried, and this idea I think is my favourite, is speed dating in class. I know what you're thinking, Jane, that's a little inappropriate. You can't date students. No, you're right. You can't date students, but they can date each other in class under my watch. So this is what I did, and I have to role play it for you because it was amusing. Instead of having the chairs and tables set up in groups or, in lines in the classroom, I set them up like speed dating. So if you can imagine we have an interactive whiteboard, so that was up there. And then I set the tables up in rows like that, facing the middle. And as the students walked in, I watched their faces. It's a fabulous little social experiment if you ever want to do that, because they expect, rows, and they walked in and they'd been into this classroom pretty much all term. So they walked in and they just went, "Where do we sit?" I said, "Well, in the chairs. You sit in the chairs." "But they're facing the wrong way." I said, "Yeah, that's okay. It's part of, what to..." And one student actually started moving the tables and rearranging the table. I said, no, we're speed dating today. You need to... So I had one row there, one row there. I stood in the middle, which put them off a little bit. But isn't the lecturer supposed to be out the front? No, this lecturer was in the middle. And it was fabulous. I could see all my students instead of trying to keep an eye on the chatty ones up the back. I could see them all. So I recommend it even if you're not dating. And then I had one there and one there. Their chairs all faced forward. And then what I did is with this row, they just spun around with their chairs and they were directly faced to the person behind them, and the same with this side. And then I had a little bell, just like in speed dating. And for my topic, it was diversity. So I gave them a sheet of questions to get to know or to date their person. Now, I think diversity was fantastic. That was a perfect topic for it. But I think you could do it in virtually any topic where you want students to interact with each other, where you want them to have a discussion. But it was fabulous because they learnt so much more from each other. And I was lucky I had a very diverse group, but they learnt so much more from each other than they learnt from me. And all I did was walk up and down my aisle, just eavesdropping on these fantastic conversations. So I think dating is perfectly appropriate for the classroom. Give it a go, and but watch the students' faces when they first come in, because they find it really unexpected. And don't forget your bell as well, so that every couple of minutes they just move on to the next person, take their notes. At the end of that class, I then actually gave them a choice and said, choose one person who you would like to know a little bit more about, and then I let them go off and have one-on-one conversations. Part of their assignment was also to interview someone from a different diverse area than them, so it worked really well. So there you go, speed dating in class. My next one was flash teaching. Now, I have to say I did steal this a little bit from guerrilla teaching, but I gave it my own slant. So flash teaching is about a workshop going on, and as you know from the flash mobs. All right, now I'm not recommending you burst into your colleagues' workshops and start dancing, although I'm quite sure the students would quite like that. But the idea of flash teaching is that you do burst into somebody's workshop, but you become almost like a guest lecturer, but not. Because you just come in, you interact with the students, you might ask them a question. I'll give you an example. There might be a workshop going on and the lecturer is presenting to the student, and the flash teacher just comes in and says, "Well, what do you think about what Jane's been saying?" And then the students, their brain switches. It's unexpected, for one, and it gives them just that little jolt of energy. And they clue on. They have to actually think, because they're then explaining to the flashlet teacher what it is that they're thinking about. So they actually have to, oh, okay then. It can be as simple as just a question, But flash teaching, I like it when, most recent one I did was I was talking about children with autism, and I knew one of my colleagues had a child who was just recently diagnosed with autism. So I asked her to flash teach me and said, I'll be in this workshop at this time. I just want you to come in. I want you to just interrupt, give the parent perspective, and then go out. And she said, oh, I have to prepare something. I said, no, this is flash teaching. You don't prepare. You just come in and you just let it go. And it was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted. And the students said they got so much out of just that 10 minutes that she came in and flashed me, and then she went out. But then it gave me another angle, because I was able to say, right, now let's talk about what Joe just talked about. Let's pull that apart. Let's have further discussion. So again, that authentic, that real learning. So flash teach each other. Sometimes my colleagues and I, we're very close and we know each other very well, which is helpful. But sometimes you can have two come in and they just completely take over. The other thing is role playing. I hate getting students to do role playing because I know they hate it. I hate it when I'm a student, so I'll never do it to my students, but role plays are really useful. So instead I'll do it with my colleagues in front. They come in, role play, they flash out again, and the students can actually see what's happening. So flash teach. The other one, and on my blog I've written the title, there's an app for that. Apps, loving using apps in the workshop. They have just changed my teaching. But it wasn't until I said, right Jane, PowerPointless your year, what else are you going to do? You still want to use technology? So I thought, I'm going to search out some apps that I can use with my students. Rather than me sitting and putting all this content on BB9, I'm just going to give them the app. And most apps are either free or very low cost. So the ones that I'm using, 99 cents, but most of them are free. There's a nursing one that I found the other day on anatomy, and it was 99 cents without the ads. So you can still get the ones with the ads if it's appropriate. Some of the ads are a bit dodgy, so you do have to check. But with most adult learners, we're okay with ignoring those ads. And let's face it, most students have a smart device. 2, 3, in fact I'm watching you now, you've all got smart devices, and you've probably got a smartphone in your pocket as well, and you've probably got your MacBook in your car, and most students do have that. I'm lucky enough at West Coast to have a class set of iPads, and I do recommend them. They're fantastic for those students who forget or their batteries are flat, and we load all those apps up. The library actually does it for us, so they're their iPads. They load all the apps for us, and then all we have to do is go in and use them. So I have on my blog, I have actually put some apps, some examples of really good ones for you, but things like Speed Anatomy for nursing, fitness, disability, health students. There's a fantastic one on Child Development 06 for anyone doing child development, children's services, education. There's a fabulous one for horticulture lecturers on called Plant Life. Which is fantastic, and I know one of my colleagues in horticulture has asked all the students, make sure, I don't want you buying textbooks, I want you spending your money on apps. Make sure you all have a smart device with this app on it, and they use it extensively. There's even one for business and management. Anyone business management here? No? Anyone playing along at home, business management? No. Few, maybe agenda planning. It's perfect. I've also got first aid. Believe it or not, there's lots and lots of apps for LLN. So if you've just come into that now and you're thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? Lots. In fact, there is actually an app called LLN, and there's, I've put a link for an entire brochure of apps linked to every area of the LLN. So whether it's spelling, grammar, mathematics, all of those, they all have an app for them. So again, a class set. I also use my phone. It is my personal phone, but I use it as well, and I'll show the students apps. We do sign language in our class, or show the students the sign language app. Everyone go and buy this. We try and keep textbooks to a minimum so that we can ask, that's their book list now. Occupational health and safety, spelling, there's lots and lots of options. And I was looking at both Google, I use iTunes, but Google Play for the Android, and a lot of them are duplicated for both. Another fun thing, I do like my fun technology in class, but I've been experimenting a little bit with web quests, and I'd like to take that a little bit further next year. Web quests, well, they're a quest, and they were developed by Bernie Dodge, who basically describes it as an inquiry-based activity using resources from the web. Now, you can do it with a word. You can also do it, and I'll whisper this, in PowerPoint. But there are actually websites, free websites set up where you just input all your information and they set up the web quest for you. Then all you have to do is give the URL to the students, and you can do this in class or you can do it, they can just do it on their iPads because they're not actually typing into it, it's just pushing on the website buttons and the information comes up. So a web quest, what you need is a task, first of all, it's task-based. So you need a task. From the task, you then need resources that are web-based. So you need to know where you want the students to go and what you want them to find. And you need an outcome. What do you actually want the web quest to achieve? I'll give you an example. I have put a few on the blog. I've put one on nutrition. So if there's any fitness or nursing lecturers here, so there's a great one on nutrition, and you can use them. If they're already there, if you just search, nutrition web quest, have a look through and you can use them. They're all free, and you can just give the URL, it saves you making your own. I also found another one for training teachers, which I could use for my education assistants on diversity, a diversity web quest, which is built into quite a lot of courses. So they're the two that I'm going to steal from other people. But I'll give you an example of one for my area, which is education. The task might be, and you set it up, a bit like a mission. The state government has just changed funding for children with special needs in schools for their education assistant and resource funding. You need to research this information, go to these sites, and you need to compile an argument for and against this new funding model. And it's all about that process that they go to come to that end result. Another fun one in the primary school is we get them to look at the Great Barrier Reef and write to the Prime Minister about what strategies can be used to save the Great Barrier Reef. So you can make it any way you like, but WebQuest is great because once you hand over the URL, you can put it up on Blackboard 9, or you can do it in class and just give them the URL. They're off on their quest, and they don't actually come back until they've actually solved the quest, and then you can actually pull them all together and they can present their findings. And the thing is, you need to put the time in first to actually find the resources where you want to go. I want you to go here and I want you to get this. For some students, you can actually add questions to your web quest, so you know they've been to that website. So there'll be something on that website that they have to go and find and read in order to, so you can build questions in during the quest. So again, a little bit of fun, but it takes the spotlight off the lecturer. It's about the student being responsible for their own learning through that inquiry-based approach. I've also been experimenting with learning communities. That's a fancy name really for a study group, but it was because the students said, Jane, we love coming to your class. I tell a lot of jokes in class, so I think that was the response there, but we love coming to your class, but we need to tell you we'd like to spend more time talking to each other than listening to you talk. And I'm like, but I'm a lecturer. I get paid to talk. How could you not want to listen to me? So don't take it personally, but we're learning more from each other. Okay, fine. Now I am lucky my students often work in industry, so fair enough. And they get a lot of relief work in the schools. So I thought, okay, instead of doing lectures or workshops, I'm going to develop learning communities. So it's almost going back to when we used to do what we called facilitation, where the lecturer would just there and the students would come and go. But this is more structured, so I don't have a timetable anymore, which was a bit hard on admin when they were doing my role, saying, where's your timetable, Jane? I said, I'm not timetabling workshops anymore. I'm timetabling learning communities where the students will come in, they'll know that I'm there, they'll know that there were groups of students there and they will come and go during the day instead of sitting there for the whole day during a lecture. Really positive response from the students. I'm going to develop it a little bit more next year. I've also made it quite flexible, so I have a learning community night and during the day. So even if you're a day full-time student, there might be times when you might want to come to the night learning community. So I've been able to be a little bit more flexible with that. I think we have to, that's the nature of our students now, and my students want to work and they want to have access at different times. So coming from the learning communities though, I've started doing what we call in primary education, IEPs. So it's an individual education program. So I've started to individualise my teaching, and that's where the learning communities have really come to the fore. So mine are very, very simple. My IEPs are just a checklist for each student with the units listed down the bottom, but it has information like for my under 18s, their parents' details, and I use it sort of to tick off and make notes on their individual learning needs. I found that that's been really successful for my students at risk, and it's a bit old school, I know, it's printed out on a piece of paper and it sits on my desk, and I use actually I saw these folders, thanks. I've got a whole bunch of these folders, but each of my students has one of these, sits on my desk, and if anyone comes up and says, Jane, what's Sarah up to? Right, Sarah this week is doing this. So, thank you. But to communicate with my students to find out exactly what they're doing and where they're at, I use my phone. Now, a lot of people sort of go, oh, I don't know about that. That's my private phone. I did try and get West Coast to get me a phone, but they gave me a crappy little, so I said, no, it's okay, I'll use my own, thanks you very much. But it's worth it. I'm paying for the phone anyway. It's not actually costing me any more, but it does give me the advantage to claim some of it on tax. Yeah. So it is essentially a work phone. I give my mobile number out to the students. Now I know half of you going, oh no, I can't do that. Believe it or not, they don't harass me 24 hours a day, because I say to them, I will not answer the phone. I don't answer a phone anyway. I don't actually speak into a phone, so I've got an advantage. But I say you text or email, and it's fantastic. I can just pick them up and say, Sarah, have you done that assignment? Where are you up to? What are you doing this week? And they will reply immediately. It's really, really good. I've had to be careful. Because it is a personal conversation, it's not necessarily recorded, so I keep it very, very professional, and some students want to be a bit, fun and personal, so I'll just pull it back and say, these are the rules, but it's great. But the one I really enjoy is when I'm in class and I give out my mobile number on the first day, and I'll say, right, text me your questions. And I'll stand up the front, and they'll be sitting right in front, and they'll just text me questions. It's really good because some students want to ask a question but don't want to put their hand up and actually say it out loud, especially when you're talking about topics. We talk about child abuse as one of our topics, and sometimes, you have to manage that class very well. So that's where people can sort of say things. I can decide then whether I repeat them to the group. Sometimes I joke around, have a bit of fun and say, no, you cannot leave right now. No, yes, I know you're, so I can have fun and I make up. And some will just text me and say, can I go to the toilet? And I think, well, it's not interrupting. Yes, you can go to the toilet, and I just use their last 3 digits of their number too. But it's good because it's anonymous, and it works really, really well. I did a class once on what makes you stressed. So my question was, what makes you stressed? Text me. And some of the responses I got were actually heartbreaking. Some of the students where, my parents got killed last year and things like that. And I could never have them say that out loud in a class. So I find it quite a powerful tool. So don't be scared. Don't be scared of giving out your number, but don't answer it. Tell the students that it's for text-only communication, and you'll find that your students will communicate more as an individual, and that one-on-one level you will get to know your students so much better. And that's where I've been able to implement those individual education plans. I know exactly where my students are, what they're doing, what they need, how they're feeling, what they're stressed about, everything. So I think that by forcing myself to be PowerPointless, I've built better relationships with my students, and I've learnt some new skills. So I'm a bit of an expert blogger. I'm just waiting for one of those magazines or something to, you know, give me a contract so I can, yeah, I think you have to be in fashion or something, but I'm still working on that, you know, lecturer blogger. So remember this face, you may see it in the future. But those skills have been really fun. I'm not a great web quester, but I'm getting there. I'm playing around, and the students are, in fact, I had a 19-year-old student just last week going, blogging? What's blogging? Like, okay, well, it's your assignment, so let's get started. So those students are learning skills as well as their content, and they need those skills. They really do need those technological skills. So put yourself out of your comfort zone, challenge yourself, just take one of those and have a little play around, see what you think, see what works for you, but I think you'll find that the positive response for your students is worth that little bit of effort. Thank you very much. Are there any questions, and for those playing along at home, that you would like to ask me on any of those topics? Having said that, I have, actually we might even be able to go in, whoops. When you go into the blog, where is it? Is it there? I can't hear what you're saying. I'll just show it to you so you know what it looks like, but I'll also show you where the comments, there it is, thank you. If you scroll down, so all of these, I've just put those links on for you, but if you scroll down, you'll notice that you can make a comment in there, and then I can either reply. In fact, when I used the blog last time from my conference, I had people sitting on their iPads following the blog because I was going through it and making comments right in the middle of this, so the comment would pop up. I said, well, now that you're here, I'll just answer you right now. But feel free to put some comments on there and you like. But you'll find everything I covered today is here so that you can read a little bit more detailed information. You can go into the links. I've also put, as you scroll down, this is the link if you'd like to try out a web quest. They're really actually quite simple, but I'm going to Zoonal because it's free and it's the biggest web quest. Can't think of the word place for creating web quests. So just click on that, it'll take you straight through, it's free. Setting up a blog, this one's powered by Blogger. I've used Blogger, totally free forever. But you can use EduBlogs. I'm not a big fan of EduBlogs because they send you lots of paraphernalia to buy stuff all the time. Whereas, yeah, Blogger leave you alone, but you can use WordPress as well. So a lot of educators in higher ed use WordPress. So just click on those, and just got a few of the apps that I mentioned. They're not links, that's just a list. But you can see what you can do with a blog. You can put all these things up. Why don't you create a web quest on your blog? So, any questions?
I absolutely love the idea of a web quest, and I'm already, in my mind, creating a lesson that I've been asked to rewrite, so that's just fantastic. But blogging I've never stepped into. How do people get to see your blog? If I go and create a blog, how do they know
it's automatically published publicly, but you can make it private. I've made all of mine public. I've never had an issue. I had one guy from America send me a weird email, but apart from that...
But how do they know it's there? Where do they go?
You need to actually give them the URL.
Give who? Like,
the students.
Oh, so this is a blog that you're saying is on, because you said you had a private one. So who's
no. When I say private, I just mean it's personal. So 3 years ago I lost my hearing and I got a cochlear implant, so I started blogging therapy. I started blogging about it, but as I was blogging about the experience, and I found I've got, you know, thousands of fans in Russia and South America, and I thought, wow, this blogging thing, this has more applications than just, you know, talking about how I went deaf. So that's when I started going, I can do a blog for education. I did try it about 15 years ago actually. When they first started, I tried it with my students, and it was fun for a little while, but they were very, very limited in those days. So now you can do anything.
So how do those people in Russia know to get to your blog?
The blog, actually, when you start putting your topics in, Google runs it, this one, Blogger, and Google starts putting it into the search engine. So with mine, my deaf one is called Deaf Becomes Her. So with and there's a lot of mention of cochlear implants and being deaf and whatnot. So whenever anyone just, you know, sometimes when something happens to you, you just do a Google search, see what comes up. Yeah. So I think if you put Deaf Becomes Her or Deafness Cochlear Implant Jane, it comes up virtually on your third search down. So you can either give the URL, so it's just a website basically. Yeah. So you just give the website, email it out or text it out to your students and say you need to go into this website, this is what we're going to use. Primary teachers use them extensively, communicating with parents. That's where I first started. Yeah, so I was teaching primary teachers how to blog in their classroom. But you can use it for either, there's some teachers and lecturers who just use it communication, so they just say, check this URL every day. You don't, once it's on your computer, you don't need to log in all the time. So sometimes it's a little bit easier than BB9 announcements all the time. You just want to get that out there. Check this. You can also get your students to set up an email alert. So if you put anything, you post anything, it sends them an email. So if you make a comment on this, I'll actually get an email with your comment, and then I can go back into the blog and answer it. And there's lots of little widgets, they call them, that you can put down the side. So these are all little widgets. I put those on. You don't have to. But yeah, as soon as you press publish, as soon as you've done your pretty design and press publish, it goes live all around the world. So whoever goes in and searches, so if you just put in Year 2 blog, you'll probably find 40 Year 2 blogs that you can just flick through in Google. So yeah, because it's powered by Google, you do, I have put, if you just want to have a play around, you can also delete them. If you sort of get to a point where you think, oh, I don't want this out there anymore, you just delete it. You do need to set rules with your students. So you need to set, you know, no swearing, no being mean to each other. Remember, this is public, everybody reads. So you do set rules, and you have to be fairly strong with those. But yeah, because it is a form of social media essentially. But it's not Facebook, so you get around some of those. Yeah, it's like a wiki, you know. Yeah. Works really well with the LLN students. Quite a few of my colleagues use it for their LLN students because it's easy for them to just pull it up on their phone. You can, I've got mine as an app on my phone as well, so I can check my own blog. But it's good fun and it's easy. It's actually easier than BB9. So BB9 is fantastic. I love it, but this is actually easier. And you can put the link on BB9 to your blog as well, and to your web quest, and so they work together. They work in unison. But I've put a little bit of information here, so if you want to read that, the only thing I have to warn you about with blogs is that the posts are chronological in order. So when I'm doing this, I wanted blogging to be up the top, so I had to do blogging last, because it goes in chronological order of date. Yeah, so your newest date is always up the top, which is great for education because it means the newest stuff is always the first thing but when you're using it as a presentation tool, you have to go backwards. So, but you can edit. Sometimes they go, oh no, spelling mistake. So I quickly go in and you can edit it like that. So it's quite a versatile tool. But pop in and just, yeah, a little bit more information there, and I've got the links there so you can go straight to Blogger, get yourself a Google account and just have a little play. If you don't like it, you delete it. So, yeah, good question. Any other questions?
Actually, this is just an administration from a different perspective. So you don't have set classes and your students don't have set attendances. So
yep.
You don't have roles at West Coast? You don't
Yes, yeah. What I've done is I've created a, I'm not sure I'm using the official word for it, you'd have to check with admin, but I use an ongoing open-ended role. And an open-ended role doesn't need a timetable attached to it. So I will still give my students a timetable, so the learning communities, these are the times, and I give them general topics as well. We'll be focusing on this, or I will have resources for this. That's the main thing with those learning communities, is you have to provide the resources. I get fake IKEA plants, put them on the table, and make it an environment, you know, as sort of a nice environment. If they want to bring food or drink, that's fine. They always seem to bring lollies and things to chew, and then they set up their laptops and off they go. And there's lots of talking, lots of working. But the students who have participated in learning communities at this point, I'll be doing it more next year and really developing it. But they were always the first ones to submit their assignments. And then they would text me and say, just submitted the assignment, can you mark it now? Because we're sitting down in the class. Sometimes they'd actually text me and say, can you come down for a minute? And I'd sort of wander down and say, yep, what's up? So I always had them close to my office where I was available, but I could still go off. And so, yeah, it's been fun, but I think it needs to work for you. But if you go and speak to your administration about how can you set it up where, because I still record attendance for those learning communities, that's important. But yeah, it's open-ended. I'm sure it's open-ended role and ongoing. So I let my students enrol anytime because I have online and flexible students. We still do have sections where they come in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 9 to 2:30. So we still do have that, but that's not how I teach. Yeah. I think it's just, you know, stepping out and trying something new. If it doesn't work, go back to what we were doing before. But this was initiated by students. This wasn't me. This was actually students saying, we want to spend more time talking to each other than we do to you, because they had the assignment, and a lot of our assignments are structured to for learning. So by doing the assignment, you know, you're learning that content at the same time. So yeah, it was a little bit of fun. But you know, I've been a lecturer for 18 years, and I think I get to the point where sometimes I get a bit bored with myself. So it's like, yeah, let's do something different, not only to entertain you, but to entertain me as well, so that I can stay passionate in what I'm doing, and I can be enthusiastic about coming to class because, I really, really want to, you know, show you how to blog, and I really want you to learn something new, and I really want this. So yeah, it's not just about exciting them, it's about exciting me as well and showing them that passion. So yeah. So there you go. So who thinks they might give blogging a go? Oh, goody. Who thinks they might set up a web quest? Yeah, I think you do web quests with any topic at all, any topic at all. Who thinks they might try the learning communities and take themselves from not out the front, but in the middle? Yeah? Yeah, they've been really good, taking the pressure off the lecturer to prepare something as well. Who thinks they might do a bit of flash mobbing of their colleagues? That could come out wrong, couldn't it? You might want to explain it to them first, but yeah, a bit of flash mobbing never hurt anyone, I don't think. And apps. Who's going to go and search for some apps and see what they can get the students? Yeah, okay, good.
Authorised by the Government of Western Australia, Perth.